the thing you always should never forget if you're working for a broken dealer is that you are nothing more than a number. Let me say that again. You are nothing more than a number.
So they're gigging the people at this insurance company that want to do manage money or charging fees for financial planning, all the fiduciary work side of our job, in favor of the people that are just out there selling product.
You can hire lots of professionals, et cetera, et cetera. But so if you think the winds shift and compliance doesn't start scrutinizing your book, if you make someone mad inside the executive branch or compliance department in your broken dealer, they're going to come after you and they will find something in your book and they will cut you loose and they don't care. All right, welcome back. This is the Broken Dealer Podcast. I'm Daren Blonski, your co-host with Mr. Carmine Corino. We've got an interesting one today, a topic. What do you do when your broker-dealer changes the game on you? What do you do when your independent broker-dealer sells? We've all heard recently of a big one out there selling to another big one and being gobbled up. And Carmine and I have spent a lot of time over the past few months talking with a lot of these advisors that we know going through this transition, talking about what they're thinking. How are they thinking about it? Are they going to stay with the firm that just sold and go to the new firm they got sold to? Are they going to unbolt, create their own thing? Are they going to join another one? Are they going to build a collective of advisors and package it all together? We're going to talk about some of the nuances there, some of the things to think about if you're planning to go independent, some of the things to think about if you're planning to stay with your now sold broken dealer, or if you're going to create your own enterprise. So lots to unpack here, Carm.
You know what's funny? I just noticed that you and I are incapable of saying broker dealer anymore. We can only say broken dealer because we've been saying it for how many years now? Did you notice that? It just came out of your mouth.
Yeah.
So smooth.
Yeah, it's just...
And it's so true.
It is so
it's
true.
so true.
Even the good ones, because like this particular sale that
Yes.
just sold was looked at as like, you've arrived at the best broken dealer on Wall Street. And they sold to another very broken dealer. And now you have all these advisors, and a couple of them are in our group. 3 of them or 4 of them in our group were with that firm. And they're all just like pulling their hairs out. Some of the advisors are like really angry about it. And it's like someone just dumped them and they're going through this whole emotional process. And others are just very practical about it. And then yet there's others now that have like partnered up with a lot of different advisors and saying, we're going to build our own thing now. And Carmine and I are sitting there like, yeah, okay, go.
Go team.
Been there, did that. And anyway, it's a lot of pieces to think about. And talking about all these contracts that they're getting signed into that like at the end of the contract says, yeah, anything in this contract, we can change after 6 months. Doesn't really matter. And Carmine and I know better. That's just going to get changed. So.
Pretty much. And, you know, this goes back to, I know Daren, you and I spoke about this, and I've spoken about this at other podcasts and webinars about having true alignment with your firm. If you don't have true alignment, you can probably coexist because there's some alignment. You'll find it very hard to scale the business that you want when it contradicts the business that they want.
You'll find it very hard to scale business when the business you want contradicts with the business they want.
Correct. So true alignment is when your vision of your practice overlaps with the vision of your parent firm. And a lot of times in these bigger companies, it's almost impossible because they're so big, right? And if they're private equity owned, here's the rub. If they're owned by private equity or they're owned, if it's a public company, either way, their fiduciary responsibility, the owners of this enterprise, are to their shareholders, not to their clients, certainly not to their advisors. So imagine that being the moral compass or the decision where there's a surplus of cash flow. Are they going to use that to buy more practices to boost EBITDA, or are they going to invest in some technology that will empower their current advisors? You talk about a conflict of interest. When their legal fiduciary duties to shareholders and not to their advisors or to their clients, in the game that we're in, the fiduciary game, that's a hard no for me to swallow.
Pretty amazing when you think about it. That's like the way this, I mean, like legitimately, you think of like you're talking on both sides of your mouth, right? So if you're in the broken dealer world and you're sitting there telling your client, oh, I'm a fiduciary, and you work for a public firm, you're fundamentally lying, because
Pretty much.
that firm's obligation is to the shareholders. And that is the way business is set up in the United States of America. So it's shocking to me how often I hear coming out of other advisors' mouths that work at broken dealers saying, oh, I'm a fiduciary. Dude, you don't even understand your own business, man. Like, it's crazy. You're just lying to your client, and your client just doesn't know the difference.
Well, that's the one thing I will tell you. Most clients don't. And let me give you an example. So, coming from the insurance company world, when I had these conversations of when I went independent back in 2020 of the why, some clients didn't even know I had an affiliation with an insurance company because we didn't sell a lot of their product by design. We did what's best for the client. But that lack of alignment over the years eroded my ability to scale a company where I said, all right, I got to jump ship. There's too much water in here. I got to go. Right. But it took many years for me to get to that point, which, one common thread with any advisor that extracts themselves from these constrained environments is I wish I did it earlier. Even to this day, we had a large team just join us about a month ago. I spoke to one of the advisors today, and he said, I wish 3 years ago is when we started talking. He said, I wish I did just 3 years ago. That's the one common thread. But when you don't have true alignment, it's going to be very, very hard. And having confidence in how you portray yourself as a true fiduciary to your client, when you're at an enterprise like with Daren or with me, where you do have true alignment. Our visions are aligned. We're going to support you in your vision because it's our vision as well. Those conversations become much different at the client level. There's much more conviction.
It's interesting. So I was thinking about, I think a lot of times, like, what gets in the way of an advisor? Because what I have found, and I know you have too, Carm, where you're talking to an advisor, they're trying to decide if they're going to come work with you and work as a DBA into your business. And one of the big decision points is whether or not they go with like a big independent broker dealer and get a big check, because the checks in this business are massive. And I think the broken dealers have set it up such that intellectually you can create some cognitive dissonance and allow yourself to take that big check and then tell your client you're a fiduciary and you're only working in their best interest, which is fundamentally flawed if you're a purist, right? Because I don't know how you could tell a client that you're a fiduciary to them when now you're landlocked into that client, into that broken dealer. You've got to serve what they say and what they tell you to do. That broken dealer is a publicly traded broken dealer, so they've literally have to serve the shareholders over the clients and the advisors. It just doesn't work, but that's the way the industry is. So whatever. But there's this purest feeling of being truly independent versus this sense of like, I'm independent, sort of, but I'm not going to talk about all that stuff that's out there. I just think it's really interesting. And I always wonder, like, what happens in our minds. And I guess it's no different in anyone's mind whenever we make a sacrifice ethically, right? We make a justification in our mind for something. And I think it's the same process. So one item I was thinking about when you're talking about that, Carm, is how amazing it is. I was thinking back when I was working for a broken dealer, and it would take me literally a half hour to explain the fees if I was going to do it legitimately, like legitimately disclose all the fees that by law, technically you have to disclose. It would take me a half hour. And then the client's eyes would still go, I have no idea what you just said to me. And so then after a while, you're like, this is useless. Like, explain to these people what the fees are, because they don't actually understand it and they're not going to understand it. They don't want to understand it. Once you become an independent advisor, it's literally a 30-second conversation. Like, here's how you pay me. Here's how I get paid. This is it. And it's pretty amazing, pretty freeing feeling.
Yeah.
As an RIA. But I digress. I'm off the topic. The topic today is really, what do you do when things change in your org, and what are the choices? So Carm, if you were going to be making a decision, what are some things you would be thinking about when it comes to whether or not you'd stay with your broken dealer, move to another broken dealer, or go independent?
That true alignment would be the piece.
What do you mean by true alignment? Because I feel like that can be such a broad topic.
It can, because you can have some alignment. So at the insurance company I was at, I had some alignment. You do this level of production. This is where your payout will be. This is, the trip that we're going to gas up. That's the greatest trip ever. Bonuses of this, renewals of this and that. Like, okay. And I had some alignment there. But what eroded over time was when you start peeling that onion, when I started becoming more aware of what's out there around independence and what do you mean you don't have product requirements every year? What do you mean you can use this technology without any of this? I thought this was industry rule, and you come to realize when I was dumb in the beginning is I thought this was the rule. No, these are the company's rules. And they're great at brainwashing us and keeping us captive in this bubble, and they kind of protect us. In fact, I wrote this down as an example of how good they are with giving us the narrative on how we help clients. So at this insurance company, they're big on study groups. And study groups is basically another term of a mastermind. The last study group meeting I met with these group of people, and I'm so friends with a number of them, is when I announced I was leaving the insurance company. And one of the members said, well, I don't have a problem with any of the rules, because I act in my client's best interest. I go, okay, so if you sold this, if you have a managed account, an advisory investment account with this client, and you sold them insurance products from this insurance company, did you go out and did you compare that insurance product to others in the industry to get a baseline? Hey, I'm recommending this because, hey, let's out of these 5, these are the best. This is the best based on your needs because of these features and benefits, whatever, right? And he said, no, I didn't. I said, so you just recommended the home basis insurance products because we had to do it, but you're acting in the client's best interest because you have an advisory relationship. And I put air quotes because his response was, well, for the insurance products that I have with this client, I'm not acting as a fiduciary, but for the investment accounts, I am. I said, does that sound like a level playing field, a fair playing field for that client? The client has no idea. The fact you didn't do any just basic comparison going out to market before you made that insurance recommendation, you're just assuming this was the best fit for the client. But for these accounts, you're acting in their best interest. I said, how is that fair to the client? And he didn't have an answer. Now, needless to say, that was my last study group meeting with them. Because I left scratching my head and saying, I don't even know what just happened. But this is the company telling us, oh, no, it's okay because, you're just an insurance agent here. You're an advisor only on this half of the relationship, which is so bizarre to me. Because if you explain that to the client, they would fire you.
Right.
Oh, no, I act in your best interest here, but certainly not here because I'm not going to shop your products. I'm just going to give you what I need to do to check the box for my company. But so, and again, I got off the topic there, but
there's a term in our industry called selling away, which I always just thought was just hilarious, right? So in the broker dealers who run FINRA put in this rule, it's called selling away, that stops it, makes it basically impossible for an advisor that's affiliated with a broken dealer to sell any other product that is not offered at that firm. That's called selling away. Mm-hmm. And then you were saying that, and I thought about that. And I'm like, even the firm I worked with didn't have their own insurance company at it. But they would create all their proprietary so they go to like one of the big insurance providers and they would be like, hey, we have this special share class annuity or this special share class insurance policy that we could only sell on our platform that was, I don't know, because I wasn't under the hood, but could have been richer in benefits, worse for the client, could have been better for the client even. I don't really know, but they manipulate these policies to fit their liking or their whatever they're going after with their business. And then me as an advisor, I'm supposed to sit there to the client and say, hey, you should buy this insurance policy and it's the best thing for you. It's the best of what I have available without selling away. But that's the truth of it, right? But you can't say that, of course, because then it's like, it's problematic.
Selling away, who does that protect? Does that benefit the client or does that benefit the company?
Right.
Interesting, right?
Yeah, right? Like literally a term created that I actually had a buddy, this is crazy. He was an advisor at this broken dealer. One of his clients came to him and said, "Hey, it was when weed was getting really big in California," right?
Mm-hmm. Hasn't it always been big?
Not legally, Carm. Now it's legally big.
I don't know. Snoop Dogg's from California, isn't he? I don't know. I always thought it was big. All right, go on. Sorry.
So anyway, the legal weed business was coming online, and one of his clients came to him and said, "Hey, I'd really like to invest in this, but of course, no like Wall Street company can do it because federally it wasn't accepted, but in California it's accepted, so it was like in this gray area." So advisor says to the client, he says, "Well, my friend over here is starting a weed business. I would go talk to him and see what he says, and they can give you a tour of their facility and figure out how it works and all that jazz." And so the client goes and does this, but there's an assistant working for the advisor. And that assistant called the home office or the office, the corporate office, and basically said, "This advisor is advising clients to go buy weed businesses." They didn't like each other, got the guy in trouble. Guy gets all busted up, and the firm came after him saying he was selling away. And he's like, "What do you want me to do? Like, we're not involved in this business. The client's asking for something specific. Like, I'm saying, here's where I would go talk to these people. Like, you're in the business of advice, right? But because the firm didn't offer that product, that's selling away."
It's
So
really bad.
yeah, I mean, and now this guy he actually didn't get fired, but they flew him back to the corporate office and like interrogated him and all kinds of intimidation tactics on him for it.
Wow. That's crazy.
But that's the thing to remember, right? Like, and this goes back to the main topic today is what do you do when your firm changes the rules on you, changes the game on you? And the thing you always should never forget if you're working for a broken dealer is that you are nothing more than a number. Let me say that again. You are nothing more than a number. And when the tides change, when the winds shift, you are a number. And so if you walk in there thinking you're anything other than a number, even if you're a massive producer to that firm, if something happens at the corporate level that shifts, that you're no longer in favor for whatever flavor you're presenting to the firm, you're out. And they will undercut you and chop your business completely out from under you. And I don't care if it's one of the big broken dealers or one of the independent broken dealers, they're all the same. And I've seen it happen to advisors because they come to us, they come to Carmine and they come to me and they talk to us about it when it happens to them. And their lives are absolutely destroyed from it. In fact, I am convinced there's one advisor I know who died of a heart attack because of the stress that it created in his life. Obviously, I can't correlate it one-to-one, but the guy had an incredible practice with an independent broken dealer. And there was some questions about what one of his assistants did. And they fired the guy for failure to supervise.
Wow.
And here's what I've learned is that the compliance officers inside any of the broken dealers, there is no book of business that is not fully compliant. Every book of business has a compliance infraction in it. They just have to look deep enough to find it. Because the way the rules and laws are written these days, it is entirely too complex and entirely too difficult for everyone to comply 100% of the time. It's just onerous and difficult. And you can hire lots of professionals, et cetera, et cetera. But so if you think the winds shift and compliance doesn't start scrutinizing your book, if you make someone mad inside the executive branch or the compliance department in your broken dealer, they're going to come after you and they will find something in your book and they will cut you loose and they don't care because you're a number to them. You're just a blip on their screen.
When the rules change, you have an option as an advisor. And change is not easy. It's very uncomfortable. People don't like being uncomfortable, including me. But going back to something that's always been said, going independent, just wish you've done it sooner. I think the sooner you look at leaving that constrained environment and going somewhere where, again, you have that true alignment and that independent view, not a conflicted conflict of interest view, the sooner the better. And this just happened at the insurance company I was at for 17 years. They moved the goalpost yet again in July. So they have this thing called counsel. It runs from July 1st to June 30th, and where you land on this council level dictates your payout, the trip that you go on, bonuses, and all this other stuff. So there's a monetary benefit to it. And for those who crave significance, then there's a leaderboard. And if you're a leaderboard lover, then you love council, right?
And to be fair, Carm, you were on those leaderboards, right?
I have the emails. Okay, I have the emails showing that I asked to be removed because I did not agree with leaderboard at this company.
But you were one of the top, right? If I'm not mistaken.
No, on the advisory side, yes. On the core product side, no.
Correct.
And they love the core product side. They did not like the advisory side. Their RIA, I was on the board there for 17 years, for 7 years.
So you're on the board of the RIA, but not on the board of the product side of the company.
Advisory board of the RIA, not on the product side. I did a lot of training with them. I did a lot of new advisor trainings in Dallas and New York and everything. And I love doing it, by the way. And that RIA that this insurance company owned lost money every year. But here's the kicker.
How do you lose money?
Right. But here's the thing, though. Like Jocko says, peel the intent. Intent has a smell. Okay, how do you hold on to intent? It loses money every year. Well, their major KPI was how much money left the wealth management platform and funded their life annuity and long-term care products. They showed us a slide in one of the finance meetings at home office. They said, look how much money left and funded life insurance and annuities. And I turned to my friend who's an advisor that was on this advisory board with me. I said, we're in Manhattan. This is the only firm clapping at how much money left their advisory platform because they only allowed managed money and that RIA channel for advisors as a complement. It wasn't their core business. Again, that true alignment, they're an insurance company. And I'm not even faulting them because if you or I owned an insurance company, we would want our pathway to be sell more insurance, right? That's it. In fact, I wouldn't even offer an advisory platform. I just want people that just sell insurance, right? If we owned an insurance company, that would be our only pathway. So this insurance company, so back to that council level, you would get much more credit for core product and you would not get as much credit for advisory. It was close when I was there, but you would still get gigged. You had to have corresponding core product credit in order for the advisory credits to count. So you can't have an overweighting, right? They had 1-to-1 rules, it was called. Now they recalculate it. You're only getting the advisors, they're only getting about half of the credits they used to get for the same piece of advisory business. So they're gigging the people at this insurance company that want to do manage money or charging fees for financial planning, all the fiduciary work side of our job, in favor of the people that are just out there selling product. One of our advisors here in a webinar framed it up great. He said, we can never grow there because for the first 6 months of every year, we were working to hit their goal. The second 6 months of that year, we're working to hit our goal. So we were only really working on our business for 6 months out of the year, forced to work with clients that don't fit our avatar, that are outside they do very high-end financial planning just to check that product requirement every year. So I thought it was a really good way how he framed up one of the inabilities to scale inside of that environment. And this has happened. Then when I decided to leave in 2019, they moved the goalpost. They took that minimum, had to do minimum amount of their core product year. It was very low. It was attainable because this company didn't have reprehensible products. So it was easy to hit that low minimum. They 4X'd that minimum. And that was my exit. I said, all right, I'm out. You're trying to make me an insurance agent. I cannot do that. And that was my decision. So they're constantly moving. And if you think this is the last move, you're sorely mistaken. They're only going to make it harder for you to do what you believe is in what your client's best interest.
So, Carm, we're going to wrap it there in this episode. Let me just summarize. When your firm makes changes, what we're saying is that you got to reevaluate whether or not there's alignment with what you're doing and what your goals and visions are and what your clients are with what the firm changes are. And I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that at least 95% of the time, firm decisions that get made are not in the client's best interest or the advisor's best interest. They're in the firm's best interest, the shareholders, the owners, etc. And I think one of the ways to neutralize that churn that happens in the industry is to go independent, either join someone like Carmine's firm or create your own firm, because that's the only way you're going to get division alignment happening for you so that you can truly serve your clients. We're going to leave it there on the Broken Dealer podcast. As always, if you have questions about that, if you're wrestling through what should I do now that my firm is sold, feel free to call Carmine. We're happy to walk you through some of the considerations that we've learned on our journey as independent financial advisors. Take care and be well.